Hello and welcome to Breaking Even with Al Paton on your official SuperCoach AFL podcast feed. I'm Al Paton. It is round 13, the easy week, supposedly, of the mid-season buys, but there are plenty of issues to deal with, plenty of questions for us to get through on a packed show. Joining me, Chloe Williams. Chloe, welcome back.
Thank you. I'd love to know who was saying this week would be easy, because it definitely hasn't been easy for me. I've spent the past day running numbers left, right and centre, but looking forward to getting stuck into the options for the week.
I may have, well, I don't know if I use the word easy, but I mean, they're only the two teams off with the bye, so that does help a bit, but yeah, still plenty to deal with. And welcoming also Tim Michell. If you've been following him on Twitter, you'll know he's the cursed man of SuperCoach this year, but we had to get him on because, Tim, the curse has been broken.
Oh, I don't know if broken, Al. I've almost cracked the top 20K though, so I'm moving now. Hopefully can make a little bit more ground during the buys. But yeah, it's been a tough year. I thought it was going to be even tougher when Dane Zorko got a hard tag from Matt Guelphy the week after I traded him in, but thankfully Lockie Ash was one of 6 premium defenders that I've traded in now this year that finally cracked the ton. So it was nice to get one on the board, and I think Lockie Whitfield playing well alongside him was just a cherry on top. But like a lot of people, I've got plenty of Fremantle and St Kilda players in my team, so this week's maybe not going to be as easy as I'd hoped it was going to be.
Yeah, I think there was a road that a few of us, including me, went down earlier in the year thinking if you're trading players in, maybe this is the week to target with only the 2 teams off, Freo and the Saints, as you mentioned, but yeah, I've got a bunch of them as well, especially in my defence, which can complicate things a bit. We'll get to all the questions shortly. Reminder everybody, like, subscribe, leave your feedback on the wonderful new studio if you're watching on Code Sports YouTube channel. And a reminder, of course, that SuperCoach Plus is invaluable during this time of the year. You can very easily see how many players you have missing and available each week during the buys and project prices and things. I saw some notes on Chloe's desk earlier today trying to frantically figure out how much players will be worth in 2 or 3 weeks and how to trade them in and out. So, that's always great to have as a tool to use, and you can get that as part of a Code Sports subscription for only $1 a month at the moment. So jump on board. And we know, every Supercoach knows that managing injuries is the key to success. This is the Injury Report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team. Not as extensive as the last couple of weeks, thank goodness, but there are some interesting names on here. Matthias Philippou, I know anyone who listens to the Phantoms Lair, poor old Dossie, you would have heard him talking about Matthias Philippou's injury. He only lasted about 3 minutes up in Alice Springs, off with a calf, scored I think 5 Supercoach points. He's TBC on the Saints injury list, but they are saying they think he'll be back after the bye, and Jack McRae might be back that game too for those who have held him. Kitty Coleman just can't get a break. He was already out of the team after a bit of swelling following his comeback from the long-term knee injury, and now he's done a quad at training and he's down as 5 weeks out, so it's probably not someone we're going to be considering in Supercoach.
Hate to see it.
Yeah, no, certainly not for a while. Anyway, and at the tribunal, MRO, Aidan Johnson got 1 week for that hit, which didn't quite knock out Nazaya Wanganeen-Miller, thank goodness, who came back and scored about 75 points in the second half last week. But Matty Rao's report was thrown out, which was the correct decision, certainly, for my Supercoach team.
Definitely. Then we also had Cullen Ward, unfortunately, with that ACL out for the season. Devastating to see, although he did inspire the Giants to make that comeback win, unfortunately for you, Al, against the Tigers. Also from the Giants, Kieran Briggs is out for 3 weeks with an ankle, which could open up a multitude of opportunities there. We're hoping to see some more minutes for Nick Madden as a result of that, so that could be great. For Supercoaches, we'll wait and see. James Sicily is out until after the round 15 bye with that hip abdominal injury. It is TBC at the moment, but that's the target for his return. Noah Bolter is available with his curfew, so he will be able to play that game, and Callum Mills as well will be available off suspension. So that's great news for our team.
Plenty happening as well at Port Adelaide, where the big news for Supercoaches is Jason Horne-Francis. If you held on to him, he's going to miss at least 1 more week with his hamstring injury. Don't think that really comes as a surprise. It was probably a bit optimistic to think that he'd only missed 1 game with a hamstring injury that forced him off a couple of weeks ago. So you'll have to be patient. And those of us waiting to trade him in at his base price will also need to be patient. But the other news is that 4 potential ins this week for the Power. They've got Kane Farrell coming back in, Asava Radigalea, Josh Sin, and also Darcy Byrne-Jones. Yeah. So that could have some pretty interesting flow-on effects. We're all looking for value at this time of year, Al, I think, with cash generation being so hard. And one of those options has been Rory Atkins that people are talking about. Always seems to come about this time of year at around that 250k mark. But you'd think that some of those fringe players like Rory Atkins might potentially be in the gun this week with some of the regular best 22 players coming back for Port.
Yeah, very sad news for the Rat there. Probably have to cross him off. And Christian Moraes is the other one. Just watch. I mean, he's been okay the last couple of games. But Subverse may be a bit of a risk. So we'll wait and see on the Port teams. That's a wrap on this week's injury report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. We did mention already St Kilda Freo missing with the bye this week. Reminder, of course, best 18 scoring. So hopefully most of us can get there this week. And you do get 3 trades every week through the byes, even this round with just the 2 teams off. Looking at some fallen primos and some break-evens, and there's some really interesting names on the list this week. I mean, Tim, you've already touched on Horne-Francis, and Zak Butters is the other big one at Port. So he's got a break-even of 197, which is the second highest in the comp. Ned Moyle is the only guy over 200 at the moment. But 585,000, we do have some questions later on about do we even try and grab him this week, because that is not a bad price for Zak Butters. But given the Port matchup this week, you'd think we'll definitely get him cheaper next week, and potentially even if we're prepared to hold off for another week or two after that.
Yeah, I think you've got to be patient. I'm talking to the Phantom about this, and his sort of plan of attack throughout the year, which has served him really well, has been if you can afford them, just get them, which I'm sure there'll be people using their 3 trades and then having 600K left for the third that go, okay, I can afford Zak Butters. But why pay 587K in a year where cash generation has been so difficult? And most of us are looking at our benches now, and we've got 7 or 8 guys there that aren't playing, when you can probably get Zak Butters for 520, 510K if you're just patient and wait 2 or 3 weeks. So he's more than likely going to get Toby Bedford saddle up next to him this week. It's not going to be an easy matchup. Like, he's been one of the most effective taggers in the AFL this year. So you'd think, let's say he scores somewhere between 80 and 110 maybe, even if he has some impact with Toby Bedford sitting off him, drops another 30K, you're still looking at another couple of weeks of falling. So, yeah, I can understand the temptation to get on now and maybe get a jump on other super coaches, but I think the smart play is to wait at least another couple of weeks for Zak Butters.
And as you touched on, Horne-Francis, similar story, 499K. He's got a break even of 158 when he does come back. So if you wait another week after that, maybe 2, hopefully we'll get him for around the 450K mark.
I think he's a slightly different scenario because he's a forward, firstly, but paying 500K as opposed to paying 580 is a fair difference. So if whenever he returns, you like Port Adelaide's matchup a bit better, I can understand the theory of getting on him a little bit quicker than someone like Zak Butters, but I'd definitely be waiting for Butters.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how much cash you got available, and being able to save a 30 or 40K could make a big difference. Any other names there, Chloe, that jump out to you? I mean, there's some players that are in our teams, or in a lot of teams, that have very high break-evens, which is not ideal. Like someone like Ryan Marriage having a break-even of 155. Like, I mean, in a perfect world, you'd trade him to Horne-Francis, but the timing's just not going to work out.
Yeah, in a perfect world, I almost would have kept both he and Matt Flynn in my side this week. Or maybe just let go of one of them, or even a rookie instead, just to do one downgrade and leave it at that, because I'm pretty well covered for this buy. But because of those bigger break-evens, Matt Flynn's break-even isn't too bad. It's 111, but I don't really see him getting that, let alone against Cherry, who he's got this week. So unfortunately, I'll probably have to move both of those on, which you never really want to do when you have players playing in a buy round. But yeah, it would have been ideal if their break-evens were a bit lower. I don't really recommend holding them, especially Ryan Marriage, just because you could lose so much money that you might eventually need for someone like a Butters. If you don't have a Gawn, I might be the only person that doesn't have Gawn. But speaking of Gawn, his break-even is 159 too. He's already lost to 24K, so that's good for people like me that don't have him. But obviously, he could easily get 59. So
we're talking
it's
about
a bit of a roll of the dice.
We're talking about rucks, and are there any cheap rucks around? And one player that I did notice, I knew wouldn't go near him in Supercoach, but Sean Darcy is under 400K now. He's 397 with 156 break even. He did score 27 points last week.
Good luck if you want to go there. I think, and the word sort of hearing from the West is that like they're only going to play him like very matchup dependent.
Yeah.
So he played against Gold Coast, was it? I think they double teamed, and that was because Moyle and Witts played. So you've got Witts, the bigger body. I don't think you're going to see Sean Darcy all that often. And I think that makes Luke Jackson just about F1 from here, because he's so dominant when he's the number one ruck. But would not surprise me if Sean Darcy played 5 or 6 games during the run home, and then they just threw him in when the matchup suited. Maybe he plays against Briggs types that are a bit more body on body.
Yeah, weird situation over there in Freo, but yeah, they're winning at the moment, so you wouldn't question it. Few low break evens that we'll probably touch on with some of the questions about who people are looking to trade in. Jye Caldwell, break even of 21, so even though he scored really well last week, he went up, I think, 11,000, so still very gettable, but now is the week to get him. Max Holmes went up $400 last week after a pretty good game, but he's got a break even of 75, so he's still good value. And at 519k, and similar for Tom Stewart, barely moved, but he will start going up. And Nick Martin has a break even of 61, but at 589k, it's just, I feel like we should have got him a month ago.
It's pretty hard to pay that when there's so many good players around 550k. Like, I know he's looked awesome the last few weeks, but you do wonder, especially if Zach Merrett's going to play a little bit more behind the ball, whether some attention might come his way. Like, what do you guys think about Caldwell though? Because like, I'm torn. I know his price is great, but he had this really sort of fortunate situation for his scoring on the weekend where he had to be like the number one midfielder almost because Zach Merrett was playing in a back pocket. Sam Durham got injured really early and he was playing full forward. So you've got the two other big dogs in that Essendon midfield playing at opposite ends of the ground. So all the onus falls on Caldwell to be the man. And he did an amazing job. Like, his third quarter was off the charts. Like, I think he scored, 70 or 80 points in that third quarter alone. But he's not going to have that luxury every week. And there's, you can go either way with it. You can say that he benefited from being the number one and that really helped his scoring, or you can say that when he's got Merrett and Durham beside him that he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting. So that might benefit his scoring as well. Like, where do you stand on sort of that role that he had that really isn't going to be there just about any other week, because those two aren't going to go down every single week.
Yeah, I think it's more complicated than just looking at his scores and seeing he scored 122 weeks in a row. They were two very different games. After the Richmond game, I was very much, let's just wait and see how he goes, because scoring in the midfield against Richmond hasn't been as difficult this year as against other teams, it's fair to say. But backing up against Brisbane, obviously fantastic. A little bit weird that he scored basically 75% of his points in one quarter and 40 odd for the rest of the game. He's got a really horrible history with soft tissue injuries the last few years, or really his whole career. It's a tricky one. Like, I don't think it's just totally a slam dunk, but at that price, and when we've already talked about, we're struggling to find the cash to get primos to finish our team. If you can get someone who we'll call him a primo. I'm happy to have him sitting in my last midfield spot for the rest of the year. Hopefully he can average 95 plus at that price. I think it's pretty hard to pass up.
Yeah, I would say the last 2 weeks he's had above 70% CBAs. So obviously had that fortunate situation against Brisbane, but we know that when he has a high level of high centre bounce attendance, he normally scores well. But the injury issue would probably be the thing that would scare me off more than anything, because I think his scoring potential we saw last year is definitely there. But, when you are starting to run low on trades, which I'm sure most of us are, and even the value side of things, obviously buying him, it's great to get him at that low price. In terms of his break even, you're not really going to be wanting to trade him out again to kind of maximize that value, I guess. So it's more just getting him in at the low price and hoping he can do a job for you, one of your last mids. But then you kind of have to have faith that he's not just going to crumble, and then you might be left with one trade and an injured Jye Caldwell. So.
Your only saving grace there, Chloe, isn't it? Is like, as we said, his break even's in the 20s. So hopefully he makes 30, 40k this week. If you get 4 weeks out of him, he might be 520, 530k, and then you're going to have a multitude of options to sideways to if you've got any trades left.
That was more my point, is you might get to the point where you have one trade and then he breaks down. And I know there's also people looking at the Stewart types.
Well, we've got no rookies on our bench to cover for 1 or 2 weeks either.
Yeah, we do have the flex, which thank goodness for the flex this year. But I would just say he looks great on paper, but as you said, it's not necessarily a slam dunk.
So I reckon we've been waiting for like a value premium to jump out for that flex position, Al, to be like our finishing option. So there's going to be some people that, like we were just talking about, potentially come and keep a Levi Ashcroft type and go, okay, I can get 60 or 70 out of him most weeks, maybe a little bit more in the unfortunate scenario where one of my premiums gets injured early in a game or something and he replaces their score. So I'm still getting a 70 or 80 and that's okay. But I think like the perfect world is sort of fallen on us this week, where we've got 2 really good sort of fallen premiums that are very cheap in Caldwell and Tom Stewart for that flex position that we can carry for the rest of the year, really. And we think more often than not, we're going to get at least 80 out of those 2 guys, aren't we? But like Chloe said, we've got an injury concern with Caldwell, and apart from the last couple of weeks, Tom Stewart looked like he was running on one knee for most of the year as well. So there's definitely risk with both of those 2 guys, but What do you reckon if people are? I can't pick Stewart because I've already got about 15 defenders in my team somehow. But
Flex.
What if one of them, Dane Zorko, was in flex
Oh,
on the
okay.
weekend? So, but what happens? Do you think if people have got a bit more flexibility than I've got, where they're tossing up Stewart or Caldwell?
Yeah,
which
we
I'm
do
sure
have
some
that.
people are this
Yeah,
week.
we have a question exactly that. I think of the two, I'd feel safer with Caldwell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't mind that as
I do
both
like
of them
Stewart, though.
as value. Yeah, because being able to get a primo for for 20k exactly this year, that could be so valuable. And I know I've heard people saying maybe with the flex and you've got a 23rd score drops out, you could get away with only having 22 primos and then a rookie basically in your flex. But every week there's something happens that Chad Warner last week. That you want a decent score, so you're dropping that poor one out, or someone gets injured or something subbed off.
Well,
that
yeah,
you
if
don't
you
see
could have
coming.
someone in your flex that scores 100 that week when Chad Warner scores,
That's
what
what I
he's
think. You
like
want the
53 or
reliability.
something.
don't you? Yeah.
You could get an extra 50 points, which might be really valuable. So,
But then it's how do you get there when we don't have much money and we don't have many trades? So these guys might be the
The
way.
reason I lean towards Caldwell out of those two, not just because I have like 15 defenders, like I say, is because we're going to get Callum Mills in a couple of weeks as our defence, and
I'm looking.
lots of us
thinking,
already
where
have
does he
4 or
go?
5 premiums. I think we're going to want Callum Mills. Like I know his first game he started hot and then faded out a bit, which is probably inevitable. We get another look at him before Sydney's round 14 bye, and then we can potentially trade him in coming off the round 14 bye as well, which is really handy. But yeah, you're going to need a spot for Callum Mills, and getting Tom Stewart might take up that last defensive spot for you.
Yep. All right, quick round of rookie roulette before we get to some more questions. And I thought this week, try and pose the question of, what do we prioritise when trading out rookies? Is it, you're looking for break evens, or who's going to make money, who has safest job security? Would you trade out a non-playing rookie versus some of the, guys that are in a lot of teams, Levi Ashcroft, or Levi Average, as the Phantom christened him on the Lairs, break even of 77 and his average of 77 have matched this week. So, potentially might lose a little bit of money, see what happens with him. Elijah Hewitt's break even all the way back down to 28 after he scored a 90 last week, which was great for his owners. Matt Carroll, break even 35. Riley Bice, break even 110. I think he probably has to go. Luke Traynor, 89, similar boat. Caden Cleary, 91. So you think these are the ones you're punting first of all. What about Levi? Tim, are you trading or holding?
I've got no issue if people want to do either, to be honest. Like I think that, like I said, there's a world where you keep him all season and he becomes your flex and he can cover a forward line or a midfield issue because he's got that DPP status, and you think he's played himself into a position where he's best 22 for Brisbane. Will they choose to manage him like they did last round, potentially? Like they took him out of the game at 3/4 time coming off a 5-day break, which was less than ideal because it meant that he only scored 59 and as, like you said, his break even went up into the 70s. So we didn't love that, but I think he's going to be one of those guys now that probably hovers around his price. Like I don't see him dropping too far below 350k. Like he doesn't look like the sort of rookie that's going to have an absolute mare one week and only score a 20 that sends his price crashing like Riley Bice did on the weekend, for example. So you can definitely see where people could benefit from holding on to him, but at the same time, if his value, what is he, 380 this week, that might be a ticket to Marcus Bontempelli, and like you don't hesitate to make that move.
Is that what you're doing, Chloe?
I'm keeping
I thought
Levi
you
for
were
one
trading.
more week, but I will move him to Butters, so it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
The same thought pattern.
We can do that for 200k, less than 200k, can't you, in a couple
I
of weeks?
think that there's just, some people's bench cash gen has been so poor, like it's just been so hard with the rookies that you might get to a position where you do have to trade him just to get that primo.
He hasn't scored a ton, has he? I think he's got
Don't think so. A few 90s.
And I reckon he got a 99,
He's
but
been
he hasn't
serviceable.
cracked a ton.
No, he's
He's done a very good
for
job
a rookie.
though, but
Yeah. And I just mentioned, I know some people still have Isaac. I think he's still in about 40% of teams. Isaac Kako has gone up about 60k in 12 rounds. Break even of 32 this week, so gettable against the Blues.
Who's made more cash out of him and O'Sullivan?
Yeah.
Like
We've had some real slow burns.
in all the
haven't
time I've been playing Supercoach, I can't remember 2 slower burns than those two guys. Like in 10 rounds, they've made averaged about 5 or 6k each. He's going to have a spike score at some stage.
Yeah.
But we've been saying that for 2 months, and it still hasn't happened. So
Now that you've
fingers
said
crossed
that,
for
it'll be when he kicks 5 against Carlton.
it would not surprise me in the slightest. But it's just whether people can be bothered being patient with him for long enough. I'd be tempted to turn him into Angus Clark this week and take 100k and use that elsewhere.
He's your classic warm body through the buys that just when you're counting 18, 19, there's another one. But inevitably his score probably drops out anyway. So
but it's like I said about Levi. Again, he's sort of hit his unless he gets a 70 or an 80 in there, he's just about hit where he's going to be around.
Yeah, he
for
probably
a long
won't drop,
time,
but,
so
yeah.
he's not going to drop a lot, but you're not getting much by holding on to him either. I think most teams have got 19 or 20, especially this week.
You would hope, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my score wasn't ideal last week, but in terms of warm bodies, like Boxall got about 40, I think, and that was enough to save me from being even worse than my score already was. So it is good to have players around who can play a role. But yeah, I think this week most people should be pretty set and not have to rely on Kako for their score.
But just, probably a note to keep in mind next week and the week after. And again, we mentioned that, SuperCoach plus the buy feature there is really handy to know.
Yep.
You might be totally fine this week and you might bring in a Tom McCarthy who's not even playing, but then where does that leave you next week in terms of numbers? But
it makes a big deal. So I'm going through my team. Obviously, I've got SuperCoach Plus, but then my son signed up and he doesn't have it. So you have to manually sit there and cross off. It takes a long time. So well, because we only need one subscription for the family. So cost of living, Chloe.
A shout out to Harry too. Didn't he do a SuperCoach talk at school this week?
He did. He did a SuperCoach presentation. For his best targets for round 13, and they were pretty obvious. Get Tristan Cherry, get Max Gawn, and a few others. But no, he's out there having a crack. So
that's what we love to see.
Well. The curse doesn't live on for you.
He said, actually, I've got to show it to you. He said, make sure you show us. So,
okay. Yeah, no,
it's
we'll check
a little Campbell presentation. I'll run you through it.
Very good. Questions. So we've mentioned Marcus Bontempelli a few times this week. Obviously, a super attractive target. The classic SuperCoach 101 plays to get premiums coming off their buy, which is exactly what he's doing with the Doggies having their buy last week. His price is, he's still having to fork out, $645K or something, but he's probably not going to get much cheaper than that. So, question, is Bont a must-have? Is he a must-have this week? And Nick asking, do you go for Bont this week, or what if you could use that money to basically get Caldwell and Stewart and sort of cover two bases? Chloe, are you in the Bont camp this week?
Well, similar to you, I actually went early on Bont. But I think if you don't have Bont, just get him in, because that's how I felt a few weeks ago when I got him in. Maybe 2 weeks ago it was that I got him in. He didn't have the best score that week, but it just makes you feel better to have Bont in your team. I don't even think it's really a debate because his price isn't going to drop. If you're desperate and you think that you'd rather get the points from two value players, I do love to do that. That's normally how I start my team at the start of the year. But I had a look at his last three versus the Hawks.
Hawks midfield is putrid at the moment.
Yep. So his last three versus the Hawks, 142, 115, 122. So it could be even better than that based on who they've got on the park at the moment.
Maybe Richmond after that, I think, or in a couple of weeks.
I think it's 3 weeks away, the Richmond game. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter for him, though, because he can score against anyone. He is the opponent, really. So I guess the only thing is, do we see him playing more forward time with Trelaw coming back? They've got a few running through there now, but I think at the end of the day, he's kind of always their fall guy. And the Dogs doing quite well at the moment, but they do still need the wins to purify their spot in the top
He just
8,
plays wherever they need him, doesn't he? Which where he has the most impact, which is where he scores SuperCoach points.
I don't think it really matters. A lot of games at Marvel coming up. People have been pointing out his average since the start of last year at Marvel's in the 130s, and their fixture,
they play a lot of
their
games,
fixture is reasonably friendly as well. So I don't see any reason not to get. He always drops about 30 or 40K every year, and that's what he bottoms out. And that's about what he's done now. So
perfect for
I don't think there's any reason not to get him if you can this week. He's clearly the best of the premium buys this week.
What about Hawksy asking, he could get Bont, but it will take him down to having only 2 trades left after the buys. Is that a reason not to get him?
I thought you were saying
I'd
2
say
trades
it's probably
this week.
a reason not to get him, Have 2
I think that's not enough.
For about, how many weeks is that? Like about 8 weeks?
10 weeks or something. Yeah,
I
maybe
probably
not quite,
wouldn't do that.
Why can't you get Bont and then just keep a few trades for the next few weeks?
Yeah, I'd be doing that. And maybe I think there's, everyone's the mad rushes on to get, full premium team. But if you can get Bont in and, he's scoring all those points and it means you keep Levi for a few more weeks, that's fine.
Going back to that other one, I would get Bont over Jye Caldwell and Tom Stewart. Taking a punt on
they're
2
both
possible premiums.
Yeah. Well, and then if you've... Oh, wait, I've got the questions confused. I thought there would only be 2 trades left to rectify Stewart and Caldwell. I was like, that sounds like a bit of a disaster. If you've got no trades and you've got Stewart and Caldwell instead of Bont.
If you come out of the buys with 2 trades, not making it. Pretty obvious.
How many trades are you going to have? 2?
Oh, good lucky if I have 2.
How many have you got left now? We just do a quick survey?
Depends what I do, Al. So I have gone sort of crazy and looked at 3 trades this week, and then I've looked at only one where I'd do Caden Cleary to Angus Clark and then just sort of sit on the 18, 19 it'll give me. But knowing me, I'll probably go all aggressive and end up with 10 after this week. And look at my team, we're still needing to upgrade 4 spots and what a disaster it is. But hopefully people are in a better position than me. I think if you've got anything more than 10 after this week, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's actually not. I thought you might be lower than that. I'm be probably 11 after this week. The stupid thing is I've got a boost and I don't think I'm going to use it.
Me too, and it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
I wish I used it earlier, but I didn't really have, nothing jumped out at me to use it.
But I keep thinking, as I was saying to you just before we came on air, I go, okay, I'm going to have 8 left once I finish my team. And then Sheasel's role changed, so I traded Sheasel, and there's like 1 less premium and 2 trades that I've got to find to fill a premium. So I go from 8 to 6, and then Ryan Marrick becomes
I was hoping he would be my
and then
team,
Ryan Marrick becomes a wingman when I've had him slated to be F6 in my finishing team. So you go, okay,
I thought I'd get Zach Reid in my finishing team. Don't mean to brag.
Well, that's right. To get a full premium team, I will have to go from 6 to 4. So it just gets even harder. So, but as much as I hate that, I think keeping Marrick would leave my team in an even worse spot. So I'd rather run the gauntlet and have a few less trades and get an actual premium into that spot.
Yeah, that's similar to what Chloe was touching on earlier.
I've got 12 trades left if I make 2 trades this week, which now that I'm saying it sounds like no. Because the thing is, I still think I'm going to finish the buys with 4 trades for some reason after doing my maths. I think that it's just hard. It's just, hopefully, yeah.
Question from Josh saying, if we just take out Bond for the moment, if you had to choose between Libba and Ed Richards, both obviously having great seasons at the Dogs.
Libba's averaging 190.
Yeah, he's going so well.
I looked it up the other day. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
He's had one score under 100 for the
best season of his entire career.
Yeah.
And he's 33 or something.
And he was good last year too.
Yeah. He's been good for a few years, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for Ed Richards. I love Ed Richards. I don't know why, whether it's the ranger or like what it is, but he just ticks a lot of Supercoach. Like I know Libba does as well because he gets a hell of a lot of contested ball, which we know Champion Data love. But Ed Richards' score involvements this year are just off the charts, aren't they? I think before the bye he was ranked sort of close to number 1 in the comp if he wasn't number 1. So, and I think with like Bont back and sort of a full complement of midfielders, you're unlikely to see an Ed Richards tag at any time during the run home as well. So
he was tagged against Geelong.
I don't know why, but he's just one of my favourite players to watch for some reason. Maybe it's the fact that he should have been a Carlton player if he didn't bloody get stuck in traffic on Alexander Parade and turn up late for his draft interview.
It's easy to get stuck in traffic there though, so I wouldn't. It's not his fault.
It is, but I think about how often he could be in Navy. Anyway, Chloe, we digress. It's not a Carlton podcast, but no, I'd go Ed Richards just because I think his upside is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I like them both. And
I like Libba, but they're both good.
Yeah.
I don't really have as much of a spiel to give off about Libba as you do. I just think that, his best year, consistent. I almost wish I had brought him instead of Bont, even though we were just hyping up Bont, obviously. But I'm sure that won't be the case at the end of the year.
And again, Libba, you could have got Libba for $550K.
Yeah, you save 100
a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But now the price difference isn't that much. So in the end, I think I don't think either of them will be bad picks.
Then the question is, would you pay $600K for Libba and Richards, or just get $585 and just get Zak Butters down? Because I think
that's true.
I think out of those 3, I'd rather have Zak Butters in my finishing team. So if those are the options, you cop the hit on Butters in the next couple of weeks and hope that he shakes Bedford this week and you're ahead of the game.
I mean,
I don't think that's a smart
as an example,
move,
or keep Levi for 2 more weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
And then trade him on his buy to Butters for $530.
That's something I would be tempted to for sure.
Well, a couple of questions on Butters. Well, Aaron's asked, should I get him this week? And I think
no.
We're saying no. And DV's now the best time for Bont and Butters. But we're saying
good time for Bont, bad time.
Yeah, and we definitely think Butters, yes, make sure he's in your plans for the next couple of weeks, but not this week. Not yet.
Imagine getting Butters for $500K.
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
Too good to be true.
Well, I'm targeting him for round 14,
ago.
but I think even, as you said, if you need to get him after that, as long as you have a plan to get him, but there is the potential that he could drop just that little bit more, but I think round 14 will be the good time to swoop in.
A few people barracking for Toby Bedford this week.
Yeah.
I mean, with that break even, though, Butters can put up a huge score, but with the break even of 197, he's still going to drop at least a little bit. So
30K, I reckon.
You'll still get some more value out of it.
I think he'll be $500K in 2 weeks.
Projected to drop 40K on SuperCoach Plus. That's if he gets a score of 105. So if Bedford
is optimistic.
Hard tag, then hopefully.
And if you want money to
more.
fill the other spots on your team,
being
able to save that 40K could be huge.
Massive. Yeah, it's the same reason for if you're trading out some of these guys with high
that's right. What we say, you have to get rid of Marriage.
That could be a 100K difference if you add it all up.
A few questions in the ruck as well, and I know it's good to have two Carlton people in here because people are looking at Tom Koning this week, talking about players off the bye. And what is he, about 530K or something?
528, I think.
Steve, is Marshall to TDK an outrageous luxury trade?
I want to get him back. He's run home, and I know a lot of people are going to say, like, how motivated is he going to be? He's already got his heart set on some Kilda. He's going to take 3.7 million, whatever it is, to go and play for the Saints for the next 7 years. But part of me thinks, like, could he inflate that contract even more if he plays out of his skin for the next 9 or 10 weeks? I think we've seen, like, Michael Voss played his hand, or could have played his hand at any point in the last month. How long's Pito been back? 6 weeks? 6 weeks or so? Mark Pito's been available. And the only week he's played is when Tom Koning didn't. So I don't think in sort of the best 22, best 23 touch wood that Michael Voss sees them both playing. Like, Tom Koning is clearly the number one ruckman for Carlton. And I think that if for Carlton to be any chance of playing finals, and like Michael Voss is in a position now where if Carlton doesn't start winning,
he has to try and play finals. Yeah.
If Carlton doesn't start winning, like, questions are going to be asked about his job, and the heat is going to ramp up on him. Like, Graham Wright's going to take over at some point. We're hearing in the not too distant future. He's going to do a pretty extensive review into the club and what needs to change, and everything you hear about him and some of the great articles that have been written on the Code Sports website in sort of recent weeks have been that, like, he's not afraid to make big calls if he has to right the ship. So the pressure's going to be on at Carlton. They need to keep winning games, and that's going to be with Tom Koning in the ruck. So I think he's got Essendon twice. So he's got a 47-year-old in Todd Goldstein twice on the run home.
I will say that he does struggle against the bigger bodies. So I wouldn't, normally we see Goldie on there and we're like, yay, for whoever's playing against him. But
potentially Lockie Blackiston, who's the mid-season pickup.
That's
if
true.
Goldie doesn't last until, I think, Supercoach Grand Final week, they've got Essendon. So that could be massive for Tom Koning. Also got Flynn in a couple of weeks as well. So I think especially if you're in a position where, like, this week you might only have 18 or 19, or next week potentially, like with a lot of popular players. I think Sydney got the bye, potentially Collingwood this week as well. Sorry if that's wrong, listeners and viewers, but if you're going to be bare numbers this week, like, you want big scores in your 18. And I think Tom Koning could potentially provide some really big scores in the next couple of weeks. So when you're only looking at 80K to turn Ryan Marrick into Tom Koning, like, I can understand the lure of him. And I'm pretty keen to, even though it leaves you flex, you want some flexibility. That's the whole name of it. And locking yourself into 3 rucks, as I found earlier in the year, takes away that flexibility. But then at the same time, if Max Gawn or Tristan Cherry were to miss a week or two at any stage in the next few weeks, in the run home, like, it'd be pretty handy to know you've got a gun premium sitting there at flex that you can swing up and take their position for a week. Yeah.
I mean, that's the question. I think flex is where you'd want to get him, unless you've got sort of an unusual ruck combination, which I know Chloe does compared to some of us. But I'll also throw this one at you, Chloe, from Ollie, saying, looking at another ruckman that I must admit I hadn't thought of until this, and that is Brodie Grundy, who also has a great run home and 3-round average of 135.
Yeah, he didn't start the year great, but he has been really good the past few weeks. I was watching that game on the weekend. Had a post for the socials all ready to go, but I'd made too many posts, so I didn't really get a chance to put it out there. But the numbers are true. It's true. 3-round average, 135. He has been really good and does have a great run to finish off. I would just say it kind of depends why you're looking at him. I don't actually have his price right in front of me.
573, I just looked that up. Yeah, so he's a bit more than
he's more expensive than Koning, which is probably the main point I want to make here, is because, yes, that's an amazing 3-round average and he has really lifted, but it would have been better to jump on. I think he dropped to about 500K if you picked him up then that would have been amazing. But you can get Koning for cheaper. You'll get that extra game considering he's already had his bye. And let's just hope that Koning can replicate his form from the start of the year and go push back up into being one of the top.
City got round 14 bye, don't they? So you're buying for 1 week essentially before that bye, which I don't love.
Yeah, and I've got
when you could just get Koning and you could get cover across there. So I would just say if you're looking at Grundy, you obviously have the money to get Koning, I guess. So maybe just I would recommend Koning in that scenario personally.
If you wanted a pod ruckman, I'd prefer to go Timmy.
Well, he's off the bye.
Which is probably a bit left field, but he's coming off the bye, so you're getting an extra score out of him.
Trying to think which other teams had the bye. Port Adelaide?
Dante.
Well, for Ollie here, he just couldn't grab Rowan Marshall or Luke Jackson just because of the bye this week. So I think he was looking to target them instead. But yeah, I would say Tom Koning if you haven't thought of that already.
Wait a week and then get Luke Jackson.
Would you get off Marshall if you were an owner? He's had a very weird year, but I think if you got him,
if you've got him, you're in there now.
Yeah.
The ceiling's huge.
Yeah. He's sort of guy who could go on a run. They play a lot of Marvel games. Some questions about rookies. Jaded saying he's got two options. One, Pryor and Merritt to Bont and Clark, which sounds pretty straightforward. Or two, Cleary, Nevitt and Merritt to Bont, Clark and McCarthy. So I suppose
he's trading Merritt.
Nevitt.
Oh, I thought you said the first one was Merritt, which I wouldn't do.
I suppose it comes down to, do we like Luke Pedlar as a rookie option this week?
Yeah.
Would you go a week early on Tom McCarthy? I think Angus Clark is clearly the number one on the bubble.
Yeah.
Last week, obviously, he couldn't reproduce his amazing 3-goal effort from game one, which is not a huge shock against Brisbane, but hopefully he's safe in that Essendon team. Can score 50 plus points most weeks and hopefully go up a little bit of money. But then after him, who's the next best?
Tom McCarthy.
You would go.
I don't mind Pedlar at the moment. Maybe even just to get you through the buys. He's not going to get huge scores, let's be honest, but he will score, and he should keep going up at least for 2-3 weeks. I don't know. And Tom McCarthy's good, but for me personally, I'm targeting him next week. Because we still don't know for sure that he's going to play this week. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he will.
His
first waffle game was really good.
I think he'll play.
But it was 99k defence mid as well, which really helps.
The DPP is massive. I know this is going to sound ambitious, but let's clip this up. I'll take it back to this quote. But I reckon Tom McCarthy will end up being like my 23rd. I reckon he's going to be that guy that I just float between defence and midfield to cover lines and stuff for the rest of the year. I think he's going to be that good playing.
Can I play devil's advocate though?
He'll average 80, 85 and be that 23rd.
He did only average about 80 Supercoach in the VFL.
Yeah, but look, anyone could go into that West Coast defence.
Yeah.
100.
That's true. But I just don't want to, put this huge expectation on him when at the end of the day he's a 99k rookie.
Ryan Marrick was a full. And he went back there and jumped.
That's fair.
We are due.
McGovern, I reckon he is going to be huge.
That's fair.
Coming out of the West Coast.
In the past, we've had guys like that, like a Sam Closey last year, that come in and virtually average 90, and you can play them on field at least for a decent stretch. And we haven't really had that.
I hope that it's
all year. So
it is.
We're due.
I'm telling you, it is. Lock it in. But I was going to get him this week and save 20k. But then I looked at my bench and I'm like, well, if I want to finish my team, whatever this finished team looked like, I need cash gen from somewhere.
Yeah.
And if I'm trading Levi this week, so I'm gonna say I'm not milking any more out of him, so that's fine. But I need someone to come in and make cash, even if it's Angus Clark for 3 weeks. So I've got to go Clark, I think, and I think most people will. Our benches are just in such disarray that we need someone to make cash, even if we only keep him for 2 or 3 weeks and we make 120k out of him. And we use that cash somewhere else.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much my logic for getting Pedlar this week. I think I've
considered that as well, like using an extra trade to get him, just because
you could trade Cooper Simpson to him, and it's sort of annoying because you're thinking it feels like a little bit of a waste, but Simpson's not doing anything. He's not playing. He's not giving you any points. He's not making any money. And Pedlar, can give you an extra player during the buys for a few weeks. And then
money he makes
ideally averages 75 for the next month and makes 120k or something.
Yeah, I think as well when I was. Pardon?
What if he gets dropped?
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Well, that wouldn't help. But he's available, whereas Simpson is not available.
So you're just going to get 2 weeks out of him.
Yeah.
Minimum 2 weeks.
Well, when I was projecting weeks in advance to figure out how I was going to fit in all of these really good players that I don't have, I was thinking, well, once I get to a certain point, I'm going to have all these rookies, and if they're not making money week on week, that's not going to help me at all. So even if you get an extra 50k, that could be the difference between, well, for me anyway, affording Gawn and not affording Gawn. Or insert any premium that you don't have at the moment.
Yeah, and I was just looking a week ahead thinking, if we grab McCarthy this week, which will be very tempting to do, and we want to make another trade next week, hopefully maybe another mid-season draftee bobs up. But the guys who played their first game last week, there's not a lot of promise there. I think was Leo Lombard and Zach Johnson. They were both subbed off. So
Johnson's role was good.
Yeah, I thought he looked all right.
Played off half.
Classic Essendon, subbing off a rookie. So. Yeah, so I think ideally, that probably is the play to maybe get Clark and potentially Pedlar this week and then McCarthy next week, but then Pedlar's 160k or something. So
yeah, it does make it a bit harder.
It's a bit annoying.
This is taking us down a whole other rabbit hole. Like Chloe's talking about getting Gawn, but someone posed the question to me the other day, could you get Tom de Koning this week and then get off Gawn at the Melbourne bye and use his 700k to finish your team? Yeah, and I think you could.
But it is all trades too.
I think you have to be as desperate as me to do it. If you're not willing to run with my McCarthy theory that he could be your 23rd for the rest of the year. But if you want 23 premiums, whatever they might be, whether they're Tom Stewart or Jye Caldwell types, you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. And it might be using another trade to go Gawn and, I don't know, Gawn and Xavier Lindsay, if you've still got him, for example, at Melbourne's bye.
Yeah, you get
two premiums.
Primos, yeah. You get Nazai Wanganeen Miller.
And instead of burning 3 trades to get 2 premiums in or 1 premium in, you're using 2 trades to get 2 premiums in. You're opening up your flex again by putting Tom Koning into your rucks, and then you just cry every week when Max Gawn plays from that point on.
I'd probably rather have the trade, though, and still have Max Gawn and just get 1 premium in. Because then
that's
you
what
might
I'm
need
saying.
the trade later. Like, I think
if you're happy to run Tom McCarthy, then that can work. But
because
yeah,
I
I don't
understand
make
the
that.
logic
I mean,
of
this is
splitting
kind
him
of
into value picks, but
the
I think I
patch
prefer
theory.
the trade.
Well, your idea is, is Gawn and McCarthy, for example, better off
Plus
than...
a trade.
Plus a trade,
Yeah.
better off than Stewart and Caldwell for the rest of the year. It might be.
Yeah, I'm not quite
If
sure.
Stewart and Caldwell average 100, Gawn averages 130, and McCarthy averages 85, like I say,
Yeah.
then you're losing by doing that trade.
Yeah.
But I can understand why people are looking at it, because
And if
we're all getting
TDK
low on trades and we're getting pretty desperate.
Well, it depends.
For
If
cash
you're
gen.
out here with heaps of trades, if you've got, 15 trades or something, then I would say yeah, because the listeners.
You've got 14.
I've got, 14 before I made my trades. I've got 12 after trades for now, and that's before if I want to get Pedlar. So I would just say, yeah, the trades are still important. Like holding your trades is still important.
Yeah, no, it's worth throwing out there.
Yeah,
I reckon.
it is worth it.
If you think TDK can get within 10 points of Gawn, you're not losing too much there, and you can pick up how many points somewhere else.
He can.
We better wrap it up with
contract,
run through a few quick ones. Is another name that I love people throwing up names that I hadn't really thought of. Daniel Turner from the Demons, surprisingly averaging 94 in a 5-round average. I wouldn't have picked that. Bit of a swing man down there. Picked up Def Forward DPP actually a couple of weeks ago, 390K. I mean, I was scrolling down through Supercoach the other day thinking, is there someone in this price range who could save us? Is he the one, Chloe?
I do like Daniel Turner. I think he's been playing great, but it's just too much of an awkward price for me at that price point. You could almost wait for Horne-Francis, Rankin, Sam Darcy, one of those types. They're not going to get that low, but they'll get within, maybe 50, 30K of that price. You could grab someone more assured instead. He has only got 2 tons for the year. So I think maybe to an extent he could save you, but I don't think he's going to necessarily do any better than someone like a Levi, who you probably already have anyway. Obviously, you could just switch him into your forward line, but say, as a D6 option, Levi's not a defender. But if you look at your team as a whole, I don't know. He's not necessarily jumping out at me. I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not quite sure he's the answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean,
Great draft pick, though. He's still in the waivers.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I've got him in draft.
The Phantoms Lair, they did throw up another name for under 400K, Sam Doherty. I think he's on the table down there.
Yeah, welcome to join us today.
That was about the only good thing to come out of last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, he played great back
how well
at,
Doc played.
back at half-back as well. I think that he
shed
could...
a little tear seeing him back near his best, because I thought he was done.
I will flag, though, while we're on this topic, I only just thought of this before. If he's back at half-back, if he stays there, Jordan Boyd's available. Lockie Cowan not until round 14, but potentially we might not get our final price rise out of Matt Carroll.
I'm pretty sure me and you are the only Jordan Boyd truthers left.
Yeah, maybe.
There's not many. I don't even think
But anyway,
Boss is one anymore.
I just wanted to say we might not get our final price rise out of Matt Carroll, which sorry for leading everyone a little astray. I do like how he plays. But moving on more to Doherty, he did play well against GWS. I think he got about 118. And yeah, if he stays in that half-back role, he's only 386.8K. So if you are looking at someone like a Turner, maybe turn towards a Doherty instead. But I can't promise that he'll stay at half-back, but I do think he looks a lot better there.
I'd pick Doc before Turner, but I wouldn't pick either.
No, me either. But if you're desperate, if you're looking and you only have the 390K, you could just spend 4K less and get Doc instead of Turner.
Troy asks, is Sam Flanders about to go on a run? I think the answer is no. I mean, he was on, what was he on at about halfway through the last quarter last week? I reckon he was on probably about 30 Supercoach points, and then he's kicked like 2 goals in the last 5
The
minutes.
goals are really spiking his scores. Like there hasn't really been a role change.
No.
I think he attended 1 centre bounce last week. He's playing most of his time forward. He's kind of like a Harry Sheasley in that regard, where he's kind of just hanging around the forward
he's
line.
390K, so we're sort of talking about all these guys, and
role.
surprisingly, none of them are really that
I thought you were
great.
going to say he was 190.
There's a reason they're that
He's been
cheap, I
scoring.
guess, at this point in the year.
The only reason I'd pick Flanders is if all of a sudden, I won't say Real because you've got him Al, but like Anderson missed a period.
Or Took,
Yeah, Anderson or Took missed a chunk of time and his midfield numbers spiked. That's the only way I'd pick.
Yeah.
He's playing as a forward. Like,
Yeah.
It's not a high scoring.
This is the role I think I picked him in about 3 years ago, and he was out of my team after
So
about
he's
2
not,
weeks.
yeah. So he's not a midfielder. He's not a defender where he's done the bulk
Yeah.
of his good Supercoach scoring. He's playing as a forward. It's
Yeah.
just- I can
No,
understand.
don't go there.
Again, like he's been so good for us the last couple of years, so that's why people keep throwing
And his
up
price is
name,
down about 300,000 on his starting
But
price.
why would you pick a forward?
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
No, I
Maybe-
wouldn't do
If
that.
it was
put him on your
someone else playing
2026
that
list.
role,
Hopefully for Carlton, maybe.
if it was, yeah,
Graham
We-
Wright,
we-
blow it
yeah.
up, son. Sam Flanders in.
I'm on that train. I am
Sam
on the Sam
Flanders?
Flanders train. Yep, but yeah, if you were looking at another player that wasn't called Sam
What are
Flanders
we gonna
and you
trade?
checked their role and that was their role, we can talk about that later.
TDK
What we'll
compo.
trade. Yeah. If you were looking for someone else who had that role, you would just scroll past them if it wasn't Sam Flanders. Not a great Supercoach role that he's playing.
No.
Daniel asks, got Sheldrick last week, made 50k off him in 1 week. Could you trade him out straight away to use that cash to help complete your team, or would you ride him for a few more weeks?
Nah.
Yeah, I'd keep him.
Little chicken nugget. Stay on there. Stay on there. The nugget. He
I
loves
mean,
it.
I think he's that kind of
Loves a
guy that we're
contested.
talking
Him and
about. that
McCall. I love those two.
If in your finished team, he's your
He could stay, yeah.
final midfielder or your flex for a few more weeks until we, get some cash out of some of these Angus Clark types, I don't think that's the worst position so long as he
Him and McCall
stays in the team.
Well, I was
Yeah.
choosing between those two, and pretty much, I mean, it's not the reason that I was looking to target one of those two. I did end up going McAuliffe was just because of the fact that if you had to, you could just keep them in your team for a few weeks longer, and they'll make money as well as scoring, or at least hold their price that they reach. For the most part, you would think so.
I'd much rather have one of those on my field than having to play a Campbell Gray or
Or just
Christian
cross your
Moraes or
fingers
someone
and
like
watch
that.
to see when Box will get subbed in or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Tommy Gross.
Bloody Harry. We talked about him. He got them both last week. Son.
Who's that?
So he's
Gray and-
Sheldrick. He got Sheldrick and McCall.
Oh, really? Wow.
So he's sitting pretty. He's almost got this almost completed team now. I've got about 6
And the
spots
cash
left to
rolling
fill.
in. This is he knows what he's
Getting
doing.
shown up by a 9-year-old.
Quick one, a couple more just to finish this off. Clayton says, can we get Lee Montagna back on the pod? Yes, hopefully at some stage during the year. He's been fantastic, obviously. And
Am I not a big enough name for you, Clay?
and another question from Patch, who keeps just spamming our socials every week.
I reckon he's actually offered more on leave. 'Cause, like, he's been in the chats anyway, in the group chats that we're in.
He's saying the show's going great without Patch here. And is there a way we can manufacture it so that he can just stay in Spain for the rest of the year?
We haven't had a Spanish correspondent before, have we? What do you reckon, Chloe?
No, we need Patch back.
I think that's
That's not
above my
happening.
pay grade, honestly.
I think Patch is too entertaining not to come back.
I agree.
Sadly for him.
Check out his Twitter. He's doing some interesting trades while he's overseas
Yeah, he's keeping
on the
up with it
Sangrias.
all. It's
Well, in the
interesting
group
to see.
chats, what I don't know what the time difference is, but we're getting like 3 or 4 a.m. screenshots of potential trades. And
He saw that Ryan Merritt was subbed. I know. I saw that. Not sure what time that happened in Barcelona or wherever he is.
oh, we love it. Setting your alarm for like 2 a.m. Spain time to make sure that Ryan Marich isn't subbed out.
All right, we better wrap it up there. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Tim for jumping on.
I wish I could say it's good to be back, Al, but it was.
It
It's always fun to chat, Supercoach. I'd like to have a bit more luck than I've been having, but I have made small trades as well this year. So hopefully you can send it around. Got 12 rounds to right the ship.
Yep, still plenty of time. Chloe, thanks again.
It is weird to think it's been half the season.
We're halfway.
And we're nearly out of trades. And anyway, no, it's good to be back. I'll just
We still
keep
have a
thinking
boost, though.
about that for the rest of the day, but that's okay.
At the start of the year, 40 trades.
I
So
know.
many. And
know.
then we get
Yeah.
to round 12 and we got none left.
Because if you've used them all and it's halfway through the year, you've got the rest of the year to use none. But that's okay. I'll keep spiraling about that. But thank you for having me. It's been good.
Thanks everybody again for watching. Good luck with your trades. Hopefully have a few left. We should get through this week at the buys, all right? And we'll be back next
Good
week
patch.
to talk round 14.